Well, no, day is just fine for anything, right? Unless you'd say it's not day when it's night and you're not allowed to say good day when it's night. Well, it's getting late enough in America that it's nearly day, so I'd say it's fine, right? Probably fine. Right, wait, hold on, just let me have a quick check since I went from bed straight to my couch downstairs for a bit of TV viewing, just chilling on the couch for an hour or so with lunch, or breakfast I suppose, since I woke up. Let me just check who all is live, give some people some, well, that one little few, probably one minute or much at them, but let's give them a look. Oh, I saw her on Discord, Steph went live, yeah. She slept in as well. Great minds think alike. Oh, and gotta get a life. 24 hours stream, it'll be live for a while to come. We'll have to see if we can make it. Hope we can. Hello, Jerry. And I think you typed in the wrong chat there, Jerry. Make sure you get your Chrome tabs correct. Hello, Griffdock. How do you do? How do you do? Hope you're having a nice start to your weekend. Right. Yeah, let me quickly open a couple of tabs of streams to just lurk in. Since basically when I got to my PC today, I hit go live. Never thought I really was about that life, but today we am. Oh great. Nowadays even I am gonna recommend the hot tub streams. Lovely, lovely. Oh, Kevin is live too. It's cute, that's nice. Oh, probably not for much longer though. It's been live 3 hours already. I think I went live early on this other day. I'm good, Jenny, I'm good. I slept a nice long while, slept in for a little bit. About 9 hours I think. Which I'd say is a nice long while. So yeah, I'm good. And then from bed I moved straight to the couch downstairs to watch a bit of TV and just cuddle with my cats since they need some attention whilst my father is out of the house. So get that done. Hope she doesn't meow too much during the stream today. We'll see, we'll see. But yeah, basically just an hour of being a couch potato. And lunch or breakfast, kinda, whichever. It was around lunchtime, but technically had been just awake, so maybe breakfast. Either way. It was good food, well, didn't have much for lunch, but it was enough, it was enough. Nothing wrong with being a couch potato, surely not, surely not. Alright, let me see, get this open. Get back to the Book of Dragons in a sec. I actually didn't know yet beforehand that this was just a book with a couple of different short stories. That was a really nice surprise. It's very nice, just little concise short stories, which is lovely. Good. I'd say it's good for like reading streams like this. Because I don't know, I like reading the longer books as well, of course. It's a lovely reads and lovely good books often, but there's usually a bit like, should I give a bit of a recap then every now and then, or what? But I will. But right, let me jump into chapter or suppose more, story 6. The Dragon Tamers. There was once an old castle. 'Twas so old that its walls and towers and turrets and gateways and arches had crumbled to ruins, and of all its old splendour there were only 2 little rooms left. And 'twas here that John the blacksmith had set up his forge. He was too poor to live in a proper house, and no one asked any rent for the rooms in the ruin, because all the lords in the castle were dead and gone this many a year. So there John blew his bellows and hammered his iron, and did all the work which came his way. This was not much, because most of the trade went to the major of the town, who was also a blacksmith and quite a large way of business, and had a huge forge facing the square of the town, and had 12 apprentices, all hammering like a nest of woodpeckers, and 12 journeymen to order the apprentices about, and a patent forge, and a self-acting hammer, and the electric bellows, and all things handsome about him. So of course the townspeople, whenever they wanted a horse shot or a shaft mended, went to the mayor. John the blacksmith struggled on as best he could with a few odd jobs from travellers and strangers who did not know what a superior forge the major's was. The 2 rooms were warm and weathertight, but not very large, so the blacksmith got into the way of keeping his old iron, his odds and ends, and his 2pence worth of coal in the great dungeon down under the castle. 'Twas a very fine dungeon indeed, where a handsome vaulted roof and big iron rings, whose staples were built into the wall, very strong and convenient for tying captives too. And at one end was a broken flight of white steps leading down, but every now and then they would kick a prisoner down the steps in their light-hearted, hopeful way, and sure enough, the prisoners never came back. The blacksmith had never dared to go beyond the 7th step, and no more have I, so I know no more than he read what was at the bottom of those stairs. John the blacksmith had a wife and a little baby. When his wife was not doing her housework, she used to nurse the baby and cry, remembering the happy days when she lived with her father, who kept 17 cows and lived quite in the country, and when John used to come courting her in the summer evenings, as smart, with a posy in his buttonhole, and now John's hair was getting grey, and there was hardly ever enough to eat. Sorry if my cat's audible there, by the way. Hope she isn't too loud or obnoxious. If she is, do let me know. I'll have a quick look at her. As for the baby, it cried a good deal at odd times, but at night, when its mother had settled down to sleep, it would always begin to cry, quite as a matter of course, so that she hardly got any rest at all. This made her very tired. The baby could make up for it at night during the day if it liked, but the poor mother couldn't. So whenever she had nothing to do, she used to sit and cry, because she was tired out with work and worry. One evening the blacksmith was busy with his forge. He was making a goat shoe for the goat of a very rich lady, who wished to see how the goat liked being shot, and also whether a shoe would come to 5 pence or 7 pence before she ordered the whole set. This was the only order John had had that week, and as he worked, his wife sat and nursed the baby, who, for a wonder, was not crying. Presently, over the noise of the bellows and over the clank of the iron, there came another sound. The blacksmith and his wife looked at each other. "I heard nothing," said he. "Neither did I," said she. But the noise grew louder, and the two were so anxious not to hear it that he hammered away at the goat shoe harder than he had ever hammered in his life. And she began to sing to the baby, a thing she had not had the heart to do for weeks. But through the blowing and hammering and singing, the noise came louder and louder, and the more they tried not to hear it, the more they had to. It was like the noise of some great creature purring, 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 and the reason they did not want to believe they really heard it was that it came from the great dungeon down below, where the old iron was, and the firewood and the 2 pence worth of coal, and the broken steps that went down into the dark and ended no one knew where. "It can't be anything in the dungeon," said the blacksmith, wiping his face. "Why, I shall have to go down there after more coals in a minute." "There isn't anything there, of course. How could there be?" said his wife, and they tried so hard to believe that there could be nothing there that presently they very nearly did believe it. Then the blacksmith took a shovel in one hand and his riveting hammer in the other, and hung the old stable lantern on his little finger, and went down to get the coals. "I am not taking the hammer because I think there is something there," said he, "but it is handy for breaking the large lumps of coal." "I quite understand," said his wife, who had brought the coal home in her apron that very afternoon, and knew that it was all coal dust. So he went down the winding stairs to the dungeon, and stood at the bottom of the steps, holding the lantern above his head just to see that the dungeon really was empty, as usual. Half of it was empty, as usual, except for the old iron and odds and ends, and the firewood and the coal. But the other side was not empty. It was quite full, and what it was full of was dragon. It must have come up those nasty broken steps from goodness knows where, said the blacksmith to himself, trembling all over as he tried to creep back up the winding stairs. But the dragon was too quick for him, put out a great claw and caught him by the leg, and as it moved it rattled like a great bunch of keys, or like the sheet iron they make thunder out of in pantomime. "No, you don't," said the dragon in a spluttering voice, like a damp squib. "Dearie, dearie me," said poor John, trembling more than ever in the claw of the dragon. "Here's a nice end for a respectable blacksmith." The dragon seemed very much struck by this remark. "Do you mind saying that again?" said he, quite politely. So John said again, very distinctly, "Here is a nice end for a respectable blacksmith." "Oh, I didn't know," said the dragon. "Fancy now, you're the ferryman I wanted." so I understood you to say before, said John, his teeth chattering. Oh, I don't mean what you mean, said the dragon, but I should like you to do a job for me. One of my wings has got some of the rivets out of it, just above the joint. Could you put that to the right? I might, sir, said John politely, for you must always be polite to a possible customer, even if he be a dragon. A master craftsman, you are, master, of course, can see in a minute what's wrong. The dragon went on. Just come round here and feel my blades, will ya? John timidly went round when the dragon took his claw away, and sure enough, the dragon's wing was hanging loose, and several of the blades in the joint certainly wanted riveting. The dragon seemed to be made almost entirely of iron armour, a sort of tawny red dust colour it was, from damp no doubt, and under they seemed to be covered with something furry. Hello, Jamor, and thank you for the follow. Hope you're well. Good day to you, and thank you. Have a lovely, lovely weekend. Oh, the blacksmith wore up in John's heart, and he felt more at ease. You would certainly do with a rivet or two, sir, said he. In fact, you want a good many. Well, get to work then, said the dragon. You mend my wings, and then I'll go out and eat up all the town, and if you make a really smart job of it, I'll eat you at last there. I don't want to be eaten last, sir, said John. Well, then I'll eat you first, said the dragon. Well, I don't really want that either, sir, said John. Go on with you, you silly man, said the dragon. I don't know your own silly mind. Come, set to work. I don't like the job, sir, said John. And that's the truth. I know how easily accidents happen. 'Tis all fair and smooth, and please rivet me and I'll eat you last. And then you get to work and you give a gentleman a bit of a nip, or a dig and there's the rivets, and then it's fire and smoke, and no apologies will be the case. Upon my word honour, said the dragon, said the other. I know you wouldn't do it on purpose, sir, said John, but any gentleman will give a jump and a sniff if he's nipper, and one of your sniffs will be enough for me. Now if you'd just let me fasten you up. It would be so undignified, objected the dragon. Will you always fasten a horse up, said John, and he's the noble animal. 'Tis all very well, said the dragon, but how do I know you'd untie me again when you'd riveted me? Give me something in pledge. What do you value most? My hammer, said John. A blacksmith is nothing without a hammer. But you'd want that for riveting me. You must think of something else, and at once, or I'll eat you first. At this moment the baby in the room above began to scream. His mother had been so quiet that I thought she had settled down for the night, and that it was time to begin. Whatever is that? Said the dragon, starting so that every plate on his body rattled. 'Tis only the baby, said John. What's that? Asked the dragon. Something you value? Why, yes, sir, rather, said the blacksmith. Then bring it here, said the dragon, and I'll take care of it till you've done riveting me, and she'll tie me up. All right, sir, said John, but I ought to warn you, babies are poisoned to dragons, so I don't deceive you. It's all right to touch, but don't you go putting it into your mouth. I shouldn't like to see any harm come to a nice-looking gentleman like you. The dragon purred at his compliment and said, All right, I'll be careful. Now go and fetch the thing, whatever it is. So John ran up the steps as quickly as he could, for he knew that if the dragon got impatient before it was fastened, it could heave up the roof of the dungeon with one heave of its back, and kill them all in the ruins. His wife was asleep in spite of the baby's cries, and John picked up the baby and took it down and put it between the dragon's front paws. "You just purred at it, sir," he said. "It'll be as good as gold." So the dragon purred, and his purring pleased the baby so much that it stopped crying. Then John rummaged among the heap of old iron, and found there some heavy chains, and a great collar that had been made in the days when men sang over their work and put their hearts in that, so that the things they made were strong enough to bear the weight of 1,000 years, let alone a dragon. John fastened the dragon up with the collar and the chains, and when he had padlocked them all safely, he set to work to find out how many rivets would be near it. 6, 8, 10, 20, 40, said he. "I haven't half enough rivets in the shop. If you excuse me, sure, I'll stop around to another forge and get a few dozen. I won't be a minute." And off he went, leaving the baby between the dragon's four paws, laughing and crowing with pleasure at the very large purr of it. John ran as hard as he could into the town and found the mayor and corporation. "There's a dragon in my dungeon," he said. "I've chained him up and I'll come and help to get my baby away." And he told them all about it, but they all happened to have engagements for that evening, so they praised John's cleverness and said they were quite content to leave the matter in his hands. "But what about my baby?" said John. "Oh well," said the mayor, "if anything should happen you will always be able to remember that your baby perished in a good cause." So John went home again and told his wife some of the tale. "You've given the baby to the dragon," she cried. "Oh, you unnatural parent." "Hush," said John, and he told her some more. "Now," John said, "I'm going down. After I've been down you can go, and if you keep your head the boy will be all right." So down went the blacksmith, and there was the dragon, purring with all his might to keep the baby quiet. "Hurry up, Kanja," he said. "Hurry up, Kanja," he said. "I can't keep up this noise all night." "I'm very sorry, sir," said the blacksmith, "but all the shops are shut. The job must wait till the morning, and don't forget you've promised to take care of that baby. You'll find it a little wearing, I'm afraid. Good night, sir." The dragon had purred till he was quite out of breath. But so now he stopped, and as soon as everything was quiet, the baby thought everyone must have settled for the night, and that it was time to begin to scream, so it began. "Oh dear," said the dragon, "this is awful." He patted the baby with his claw, but it screamed more than ever. "And I am so tired too," said the dragon. "I did so hope I should have a good night." The baby went on screaming. "There'll be no peace for me after this," said the dragon. "'Tis enough to ruin one's nerves. Hush, then. Dirhams, then." And he tried to quiet the baby as if it had been a young dragon, but when he began to sing, "Hush, boy, dragon," the baby screamed more and more and more. "I can't keep it quiet," said the dragon, and then suddenly he saw a woman sitting on the steps. "Here, I say," said he, "do you know anything about babies?" "Well, I do a little," said the mother. "Then I wish you'd take this one and let me get some sleep," said the dragon, yawning. You can bring it back in the morning before the blacksmith comes. So the mother picked up the baby and took it upstairs and told her husband, and they went to bed happy, for they had caught the dragon and saved the baby. And next day John went down and explained carefully to the dragon exactly how matters stood, and he got an iron gate with a grating to it, and set it up at the foot of the steps, and the dragon mewed furiously for days and days, but when he found it was no good, he was quiet. So now John went to the mayor and said, "I've got the dragon and I've saved the town." "Noble preserver," cried the mayor, "you will get up a subscription for you and crown you in public with a laurel wreath." So the mayor put his name down for £5, and the corporation each gave 3, and other people gave their guineas and half crowns and crowns. And while the subscription was being made, the mayor ordered 3 poems at his own expense from the town poet to celebrate the occasion. The poems were very much more admired, especially by the mayor and the corporation. The first poem tells of the noble conduct of the mayor in arranging to have the dragon tied up. The second described the splendid assistance rendered by the corporation, and the third expressed the pride and joy of the poet in being permitted to sing such deeds. Beside which the actions of St. George must appear quite commonplace to all with a feeling heart or a well-balanced brain. When the subscription was finished, there was £1,000, and a committee was formed to settle what should be done with it. A third of it went to pay for a banquet to the mayor and corporation. Another third was spent in buying a gold collar with a dragon on it for the mayor, and gold medals with dragons on them for the corporation, and what was left went in committee expenses. So there was nothing for the blacksmith except the laurel wreath and the knowledge that it really was he who had saved the town. But after this, things went a little better with the blacksmith. To begin with, the baby did not cry so much as it before. Then the rich lady who owned the goat was so touched by John's noble action that she ordered a complete set of shoes at 2 shillings, 4 pence, and even made it up to 2 shillings 6 pence, in grateful recognition of his public-spirited conduct. Then tourists used to come in breaks from quite a long way off and pay 2 pence each to go down the steps and peep through the iron grating at the rusty dragon in the dungeon. And it was 3 pence extra for each party if the blacksmith let off coloured fire to see it by, which, as the fire was extremely short, was 2 pence halfpenny clear profit every time. And the blacksmith's wife used to provide teas at 9 pence a head, and altogether things grew brighter week by week. The baby named John after his father, and called Johnny for short. Wait, that's longer. Anyhow, began presently to grow up. He was great friends with Tina, the daughter of the whitesmith, who lived nearly opposite. She was a dear little girl with yellow pigtails and blue eyes, and she was tired of hearing the story of how Johnny, when he was a baby, had been minded by a real dragon. The 2 children used to go together to peep through the iron grating at the dragon, and sometimes they would hear him mew piteously, and they would light a halfpenny's worth of coloured fire to look at him by, and they grew older and wiser. At last one day the mayor and corporation, hunting the air in the golden crown gowns, came screaming back through the town gate with the news that a lame, humpy giant, as big as a tin church, was coming over the marshes toward the town. "We're lost," said the mayor. "I'd give £1,000 to anyone who could keep the giant out of town. I know where he eats, by his teeth." No one seemed to know what to do, but Johnny and Tina were listening, and they looked at each other, and ran off as fast as their boots would carry them. They ran through the forge and down the dungeon steps, and knocked at the iron door. "Who's there?" said the dragon. "'Tis only us," said the children. And the dragon was so dull from having been alone for 10 years that he said, "Come in, dears. You won't hurt us or breathe fire at us or anything," asked Tina. And the dragon said, "Not for worlds." So they went in and talked to him, and told him what the weather was like outside, and what there was in the papers, and at last Johnny said, "There's a lame giant in the town, he wants you." "Does he?" said the dragon, showing his teeth. "If only I were out of this." "If we let you loose, you might manage to run away before he could catch you." "Yes, I might," answered the dragon, "but then again I mightn't." "Why, you'd never fight him," said Tina. "No," said the dragon, "I'm all for peace, I am. You let me out and you'll see." So the children loosed the dragon from the chains and the collar, and he broke down one end of the dungeon and went out, only pausing at the forge door to get the blacksmith to rivet his wing. He met a lame giant at the gate of the town, and the giant banged on the dragon with his club as if he were banging on an iron foundry, and the dragon behaved like a smelting works, all fire and smoke. It was a fearful sight, and people watched it from a distance, falling off their legs with the shock of every bang, but always getting up to look again. At last the dragon won, and the giant sneaked away across the marshes, and the dragon, who was very tired, went home to sleep, announcing his intention of eating the town in the morning. He went back into his own dungeon, because he was a stranger in the town, and he did not know of any other respectable lodging. Then Tina and Johnny went to the mayor and corporation and said, "This giant is settled, please give us £1,000 reward." But the major said, "No, no, my boy, it's not you who have settled the giant, it's the dragon. I suppose you have chained him up again. When he comes to claim the reward, he shall have it." "He isn't chained up yet," said Johnny. "Shall I send him to claim the reward?" But the major said he need not trouble, and now he offered £1,000 to anyone who would get the dragon chained up again. "I don't trust ya," said Johnny. "Look how you treated my father when he chained up the dragon." But the people who were listening at the door interrupted, and said that if Johnny could fasten up the dragon again, they would turn out the mayor and let Johnny be mayor in his place, for they had been dissatisfied with the mayor for some time, and thought they would like a change. No thank you. Let me just end that with that. So Johnny said, "Done," and off he went, hand in hand with Gina, and they called on all their little friends and said, "Will you help us save the town?" And all the children said, "Yes, of course we will, what fun." "Well then," said Tina, "you must all bring your basins of bread and milk to the forge tomorrow at breakfast time. And if ever I am mayor," said Johnny, "I will give a banquet, and you shall be all invited, and will have nothing but sweet things from beginning to end." All the children promised, and next morning Tina and Johnny rolled their big washing tub down the winding stairs. "What's that noise?" asked the dragon. "It's only a big giant breathing," said Tina. "He's gone by now." Then, when all the town children brought their bread and milk, Tina emptied it into the wash-tub, and when the tub was full, Tina knocked at the iron door with a grating in it, and said, "May we come in?" "Oh yes," said the dragon, "'tis very dull here." So they went in, and with the help of 9 other children, they lifted the washing tub in and set it down by the dragon. Then all the other children went away, and Tina and Johnny sat down and cried. "What's this?" asked the dragon, "and what's the matter?" "This is bread and milk," said Johnny. "It's our breakfast, all of it." "Well," said the dragon, "I don't see what you want with breakfast. I'm going to eat everyone in the town as soon as I've rested a little." "Dear Mr. Dragon," said Tina, "I wish you wouldn't eat us. How would you like to be eaten yourself?" "Not at all," the dragon confessed, "but nobody will eat me." "I don't know," said Johnny, "there's a giant. I know I fought with him and licked him." "Yes, but there's another come now. The one you fought was only the one's little boy. This one is half as big again. He's even 7 times as big. No, 9 times," said Johnny. "He's bigger than the steeple." "Oh dear," said the dragon, "I never expected this." "And the Major has told him where you are," Tina went on, "and he is coming to eat you as soon as he has sharpened his big knife. The Major told him you were a wild dragon, but he didn't mind. He said he only ate wild dragons with bread sauce." "That's tiresome," said the dragon, "and I suppose that sloppy stuff in the tub is the bread sauce." The children did say it was, of course, they added. "Bread sauce is only served with wild dragons. Tame ones are served with applesauce and onion stuffing." "What a pity you're not a tame one. He'd never look at you then," they said. "Goodbye, poor dragon. We shall never see you again. And now you know what it's like to be eaten." And they began to cry again. And hello, Miss Carrie-and-Do. I'm hearing some construction-ish sounds somewhere, but I'm not sure what that's about. I don't know, I'll give it a look when I've got to a bit of a break in the story. And nice, miss. Time to relax, then, eh? "Well, but look here," said the dragon. "Couldn't you pretend I was a tame dragon? Tell the giant that I'm just a poor little timid tame dragon that you kept for a pet." "He'd never believe it," said Johnny. "If you were our tame dragon, we should keep you tied up. You know, we shouldn't like to risk losing such a dear pretty pet." Then the dragon begged them to fasten him up at once, and they did so. With a collar and change that were made years ago, in the days when men sang over their work and made it strong enough to bear any strain. And then they went away and told the people what they had done, and Johnny was made mayor and had a glorious feast exactly as he had said he would, with nothing in it but sweet things. It began with Turkish delight and halfpenny buns, and went on with orange and toffee, coconut ice, peppermint jam puffs, raspberry noyo ice creams and meringues, and ended with bull's eyes and gingerbread and acid drops. This was all very well for Johnny and Tina, but if you are kind children with feeling heart, you will perhaps feel sorry for the poor deceived deluded dragon, chained up in a dull dungeon, with nothing to do but to think over the shocking untruths that Johnny had told him. When he thought how he had been tricked, the poor captive dragon began to weep, and the large tears fell down over his rusty plates, and presently he began to feel faint, as people sometimes do when they have been crying, especially if they have not had anything to eat for 10 years or so. And then the poor creature dried his eyes and looked about him, and there he saw the tub of bread and milk, so he thought, if giants like this damp white stuff, perhaps I should like it too. And he tasted a little, and liked it so much that he ate it all up. And the next time the tourists came and Johnny let off the coloured fire, the dragon said shyly, "Excuse my troubling you, but could you bring me a little more bread and milk?" So Johnny arranged that people should go around with carts every day to collect the children's bread and milk for the dragon. The children were fed at the town's expense on whatever they liked, and they ate nothing but cake and buns and sweet things, and they said the poor dragon was very welcome to their bread and milk. Now when Johnny had been mayor 10 years or so, he married Tina, and their wedding morning they went to see the dragon. He had grown quite tame, and his rusty plate had fallen off in places, and underneath he was soft and furry to stroke. So now they stroked him, and he said, "I don't know how I could ever have liked eating anything but bread and milk. I'm a tame dragon now, aren't I?" And when they said that yes, he was, the dragon said, "I am so tame, won't you undo me?" And some people would have been afraid to trust him, but Johnny and Tina were so happy on their wedding day that they could not believe any harm of anyone in the world. So they loosened the chains, and the dragon said, "Excuse me a moment, there are 1 or 2 little things I should like to fetch." And he moved off to those mysterious steps and went down them, out of sight into the darkness. And as he moved, more and more of his rusty plates fell off. In a few minutes they heard him clanking up the steps. He brought something in his mouth. It was a bag of gold. "'Tis no good to me," he said. "Perhaps you might find it useful." So they thanked him very kindly. "More where that came from," said he, and fetched more and more and more, till they told him to stop. So now they were rich, and so were their fathers and mothers. Indeed, everyone was rich, and there were no more people in the town, and they all got rich without working, which is very wrong, but the dragon had never been to school, as you have, so he knew no better. And as the dragon came out of the dungeon, following Johnny and Tina into the bright golden blue of their wedding day, he blinked his eyes as a cat does in the sunshine, and he shook himself, and the last of his plates dropped off, and his wings with them, and he was just like a very, very extra-sized cat. And from that day he grew furrier and furrier, and he was the beginning of all cats. Nothing of the dragon remained except the claws, which all cats have still, as you can have so easily ascertain. And I hope you see now how important it is to feed your cat with bread and milk. If you were to let it have nothing to eat but mice and birds, it might grow larger and fiercer and scalier and tailier, and get wings and turn into the beginning of the dragons. And then there would be all the bother over again. Lovely little story as this book so far has been. And hello, Jinguso, thank you for the follow. And hold on, just in between stories, I'm gonna have a quick look at what seems to be going on. Some construction-like sounds around the houses. I presume it's not someone trying to break in, because if they are, taking their time with it. Really, been hearing the sounds way too long. But let me have a quick look anyways. Be right back. Well, no clue really. Nothing to be seen out there. But must just be the neighbours or something. There must be something very loud. I could feel it in the foundations of the house here. Maybe they're, what do you call that? Let me see. I don't even really know what you call it in Dutch, so I can't really look up what it's in English. Never mind, whatever. Let me just move on into the next story in a sec. Hope you're all doing well. Oh, hello, I need skills. How are you? How are you? How do you do? Hope you're well. Good day. Hope you're having a nice and relaxing start to your weekend. I'm doing well, I'm doing well. Just chilling a bit, finishing up this lovely little book of short stories. Just pacing myself a bit as well though. I'm just gonna be finishing this book today and then calling the stream thereabout. To make sure that I do still relax a bit this weekend. I've been a bit bad at keeping balance overall, so gonna have to try and step that up a little bit. But how are you? Hope you're well. Alright. And I hope they're done with the construction. I hope it wasn't audible. It might have been. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that I need skills. Hope you get to sleep soon then. Hope you sleep super well. Alright. I hope that construction wasn't like horrible there. It was vibrating the foundation of the house, so it might have been messing with the mic stand as well. Shouldn't, with a shock mount though, shouldn't have produced too much sound. But yeah, hope you get some rest. Hope you do. And they might be done by now anyways, I'm not sure. Well, pretty sure a lot of us would go back to a bit earlier time sometimes. Unfortunately, time is not really that changeable of a matter. But right, let me jump into chapter or more story number 7 in this book. The almost last one. It is 8 if I remember correctly in total. The Firing Dragon, or the Heart of Stone and the Heart of Gold. The little white princess always woke in her little white bed when the starlings began to chatter in the pearl grey morning. As soon as the woods were awake, she used to run up the twisting turret stairs with her little bare feet and stand on the top of the tower in her white bare gown, and kiss her hands to the sun and to the woods and to the sleeping tower and say, "Good morning, pretty world." Well, maybe someday, you never know. Technology is getting more and more advanced. Then she would run down the cold stone steps and dress herself in a short skirt and her cap and apron and begin the day's work. She swept the rooms and made the breakfast. She washed the dishes and she scoured the pans, and all this she did because she was a real princess. For of all who should have served her, only one remained faithful, her old nurse who had lived with her in the tower all the princess's life. And now the nurse was old and feeble, the princess would not let her work any more, but did all the housework herself, while nurse sat still when did the sewing. Because this was a real princess with skin like milk, and hair like flax, and a heart like gold. Her name was Sabrinetta, and her grandmother was Sabra, who married St. George after he had killed the dragon, and by real right all the country belonged to her, the woods that stretched away to the mountains, the downs that sloped round to the sea, the pretty fields of corn and maize and rye, the olive orchards and the vineyards, and the little town itself, with its towers and turrets, its steep roofs and strange windows, that nestled in the hollow between the sea, where the whirlpool was, and the mountains, white with snow and rosy with sunshine. Well, soon enough you'll be found, I'm sure. Nothing wrong with the comfort of not being lost, though. But when her father and mother had died, leaving her cousin to take care of the kingdom till she grew up, he, being a very evil prince, took everything away from her and all the people followed him, and now nothing was left her of all her possessions except the great dragon-proof tower that her grandfather St. George had built, and of all who should have been her servants only the good nurse. This was why Sabrinetta was the first person in all the land to get a glimpse at a wonder. Early, while all the townspeople were fast asleep, she ran up the turret steps and looked out over the field, and at the other side of the field there was a green ferny ditch and a rosy thorny hedge, and then came the wood and the Sabrinetta stood on her tower. She saw a shaking and a twisting of the rosy thorny hedge, and then something very bright and shining wriggled out through it into the ferny ditch and back again. It only came out for a minute, but she saw it quite plainly, and she said to herself, "Dear me, what a curious, shiny, bright-looking creature. If it were bigger, and if I didn't know that there have been no fabulous monsters for quite a long time now, I would almost think it was a dragon." The thing, whatever it was, did look rather like a dragon, but then it was too small. And it looked rather like a lizard, only then it was too big. It was about as long as a hearthrug. "I wish it hadn't not been in such a hurry to get back into the wood," said Sabrinetta. "Of course it's quite safe for me in my dragon-proof tower, but if it is a dragon it's quite big enough to eat people, and today is the 1st of May and the children go out to get flowers in the wood." When Sabrinetta had done the work, she did not leave so much as a speck of dust anywhere, even the corneriest corner of the winding stair. She put on her milk-white silky gown with the moon daisies worked on it, and went up to the top of the tower again. I don't really know any skills, I don't. It's just my reading voice. Slips into a Scottish-like accent, I've been told. I mean, it's some mix of Scottish, Irish, British, and a bit of things I used other ones, but there's no accent in particular. Across the fields, troops of children were going out to gather the May, and the sound of their laughter and singing came up at the top of the tower. "I do hope it wasn't a dragon," said Sabrinetta. The children went by 2s and by 3s and by 10s and by 20s, and the red and blue and yellow and white of their frocks were scattered on the green of the field. "Just like a green silk mantle worked with flowers," said the princess, smiling. Then by 2s and by 3s, by 10s and by 20s, the children vanished into the wood, so the mantle at the field was left plain green once more. "All the embroidery is unpicked," said the princess, sighing. The sun shone and the sky was blue, and the fields were quite green, and all the flowers were very bright indeed, because it was May Day. Then quite suddenly a cloud passed over the sun, and the silence was broken by shrieks from far off, and like a many-coloured torrent all the children burst from the wood and rushed, a red and blue and yellow and white wave across the field, screaming as they ran. Their voices came up to the princess on her tower, and she heard the words fretted on their screams like beads on sharp needles. The dragon, open the gates, the dragon is coming, the fiery dragon." And although a bit dazed, well, that is where I'm from, but I don't know. The accent's a bit... I'm not sure if it's really per se. And they swept across the field and into the gate of the town, and the princess heard again bang, and the children were out of sight. But on the other side of the field the rose thorns crackled and smashed in the edge, and something very large and glaring and horrible trampled the ferns in the ditch for one moment, before it hid itself again in the covert of the wood. The princess went down and told her nurse, and the nurse at once locked the great door of the tower and put the key in her pocket. "Let them take care of themselves," she said, when the princess begged to be allowed to go out and help to take care of the children, My business is that I care of you, my precious, and I'm going to do it. Old as I am, I can turn the key still. So Sabrinara went up again to the top of her tower, and cried whenever she thought of the children and the fiery dragon, for she knew, of course, that the gates of the town were not dragon-proof, and that the dragon could just walk in whenever he liked. Hello, little figure. Thank you for a follow. Honestly, maybe if I needed another site or so, I might look into how one actually gets into reading for Audible. I assume you can just kinda apply for a job, right? Somewhere. Maybe. I'm not sure. And thank you for keeping me hydrated. A lot of it. The children ran straight to the palace, where the prince was cracking his hunting whip down at the kennels, and told him what had happened. Good sport, said the prince, and he ordered out his pack of hippopotamuses at once. It was his custom to hunt big game with hippopotamuses, and people wouldn't have minded that so much. But he would swagger about in the streets of the town with his pack yelping and gambling at his heels, and when he did that the greengrocer, who had a stall in the market, always regretted it. And the crockery merchant who spread his wares on the pavement was ruined for life every time the prince chose to show off his pack. The prince rode out of the town with his hippopotamuses trotting and frisking behind him, and people got inside their houses as quickly as they could when they heard the voice of his pack and the blowing of his horn. The pack squeezed through the town gate and off across country to hunt the dragon. Few of you had not seen the pack of hippopotamuses in full cry will be able to imagine at all what the hunt was like. To begin with, of course, no one expects hippopotamuses to jump. They just crash through the hedges and lumber, through standing corn, doing serious injury to the crops and annoying the farmers very much. All the hippopotamuses had collars with their name and address on, but when the farmer called at the palace to complain of the injury to their standing crops, the prince always said it served them right for leaving their crops standing about in people's way, and he never paid a thing at all. Sorry, hello lethargic. I started a long paragraph and didn't really find a break in there. How do you do? Hope you're having a nice and lovely start to your weekend. Good day, good day. And you're very welcome. For anyone that doesn't already follow the lovely lethargic, go drop her a follow. Alright. Got some more water before I get on to this long paragraph. Oh, next couple ones are shorter again, some longer after though. Nice, glad you like it as well. Always love to bring some relaxing vibes, so I try my best. It may not always succeed, but that's alright. So now when he and the speck went out, several people in the town whispered, I wish the dragon would eat him, which was very wrong of them, no doubt, but then he was such a very nasty prince. They hunted by field and they hunted by wall. They drew the woods blank and the scent didn't lie on a down at all. The dragon was shy and would not show himself, but just as the prince was beginning to think there was no dragon at all, but only a cock and bull, his favourite old hippopotamus gave tongue. The prince blew his horn and shouted, "Tally-ho, hark forward, tentify," and the whole pack charged down a hill toward the hollow by the wood, for there, plain to be seen, was the dragon, as big as a barge, glowing like a furnace, and spitting fire and showing his shining teeth. "The hunt is up," cried the prince, and indeed it was, for the dragon, instead of behaving as a quarry should, and running away, ran straight at the pack, and the prince on his elephant had the mortification of seeing his prize pack swallowed up one by one in the twinkling eye of an eye by the dragon they had come out to hunt. The dragon swallowed all the hippopotamuses just as a dog swallows bits of meat. It was a shocking sight. Over the whole of the pack that had come out sporting so merrily to the music of the horn, now not even a puppy hippopotamus was left, and the dragon was looking anxiously around to see if he had forgotten anything. The prince slipped off his elephant on the other side and ran into the thickest part of the wood. He hoped the dragon could not break through the bushes there, since they were very strong and close. He went crawling on hands and knees in a most unprince-like way, and at last, finding a hollow tree, he crept into it. The wood was very still, no crashing of branches and no smell of burning came to alarm the prince. He drained the silver hunting bottle slung from his shoulder and stretched his legs in the hollow tree. He never shed a single tear for his poor tame hippopotamuses who had eaten from his hand and followed him faithfully in all the pleasures of the chase for so many years. For he was a false prince, with a skin like leather and hair like hearth brushes, and a heart like a stone. He never shed a tear, but he just went to sleep. When he awoke it was dark. He crept out of the tree and rubbed his eyes. The wood was black about him, but there was a red glow in a dell close by. There was a fire of sticks, and beside it sat a rugged youth with long yellow hair. All around lay sleeping forms, which breathed heavily. "Who are you?" said the prince. "I'm Elvin, the pig-keeper," said the ragged youth. "And who are you?" "I'm Tiresome, the prince," said the other. "And what are you doing out of your palace at this time of night?" asked the pig-keeper severely. "I've been hunting," said the prince. The pig-keeper laughed. "Oh, it was you I saw then. A good hunt, wasn't it? My pigs and I were looking on." All the sleeping forms grunted and snored, and the prince saw that they were pigs. He knew it by their manners. "If you had known as much as I do," Elvin went on, "you might have saved your pack." "What do you mean?" said Tiresome. "Why, the dragon," said Elvin. "You went out at the wrong time of day. The dragon should be hunted at night." "No, thank you," said the prince with a shudder. "A daylight hunt is quite good enough for me, you silly pig-keeper." "Oh well," said Elvin, "do as you like about it. The dragon will come and hunt you tomorrow, as likely as not. I don't care if he does, you silly prince." "You're very rude," said Tiresome. "Oh no, only truthful," said Elvin. "Well, tell me the truth then. What is it? If I had known as much as you do about, I shouldn't have lost my hippopotamuses." "You don't speak very good English," said Elvin. "But come, what will you give me if I tell you?" If you tell me what, said the tiresome prince, what you want to know. I don't know anything, said Prince Tiresome. That you're more of a silly even than I thought, said Elfin. Don't you want to know how to settle the dragon before he settles you? It might be as well, the prince admitted. Well, I haven't much patience at any time, said Elfin, and now I can assure you that there's very little left. What will you give me if I tell you? Half my kingdom, said the prince, and my cousin's hand in marriage. Done, said the pig keeper. Here goes. The dragon grows small at night. He sleeps under the root of this tree I use him to light my fire with. And sure enough, there under the tree was the dragon on a nest of scorched moss, and he was about as long as your finger. And hello, Misha, thank you for the follow, by the way. And how can I kill him? Asked the prince. I don't know that you can kill him, said Elfin, but you can take him away if you've brought anything to put him in. That bottle of yours would do. So between them they managed with bits of stick and by singeing their fingers a little to poke and shove the dragon till they made it creep into the silver hunting bottle, and then the prince screwed on the top tight. Now we've got him, said Elfin. Let's take him home and put Solomon's seal on the mouth of the bottle, and then he'll be safe enough. Come along. We'll fire the kingdom tomorrow, and then I shall have some money to buy fine clothes to go courting in. But when the wicked prince made promises, he did not make them to keep. Go on with you. What do you mean? He said. I found the dragon and have imprisoned him. I never said a word about courtings or kingdoms. If you say I did, I shall cut your head off at once. And he drew his sword. All right, said Alvin, shrugging his shoulders. I'm better off than you are anyhow. What do you mean? spluttered the prince. Why, you've only got a kingdom and a dragon, but I've got clean hands and 75 fine black pigs. So Alvin sat down again by his fire, and the prince went home and told his parliament how clever and brave he had been. And though he woke them up on purpose to tell them, they were not angry but said, You are indeed brave and clever. For they knew what happened to people with whom the prince was not pleased. Then the Prime Minister solemnly put Solomon's seal on the mouth of the bottle, and the bottle was put in the treasury, which was the strongest building in the town, and was made of solid copper, with walls as thick as the Waterloo Bridge. The barrel was set down among the sacks of gold, and the junior secretary to the junior clerk of the last lord of the treasury was appointed to sit up all night with it and see if anything happened. The junior secretary had never seen a dragon, and what was more, he did not believe the prince had ever seen a dragon either. The prince had never been a really truthful boy, and it would have been just like him to bring home a bottle with nothing in it, and then to pretend that there was a dragon inside. So the junior secretary did not at all mind being left. They gave him the key, and when everyone in the town had gone back to bed, he let in some of the junior secretaries from other government departments, and they had a jolly game of hide-and-seek among the sacks of gold, and played marbles with the diamonds and the rubies and pearls in the big ivory chests. They enjoyed themselves very much, but by and by the copper treasury began to get warmer and warmer, and suddenly the junior secretary cried out, Look at a bottle. The bottle sealed with Solomon's seal had swollen to 3 times its proper size, and seemed to be nearly red hot. And the air got warmer and warmer, and the bottle bigger and bigger, till all the junior secretaries agreed that the place was too hot to hold them, and out they went, tumbling over each other in their haste. And just as the last got out and locked the door, the bottle burst, and out came the dragon, very fiery and swelling more and more every minute, and he began to eat the sacks of gold and crunch up the pearls and diamonds and rubies as if they were sugar. By breakfast time he had devoured all of the prince's treasures, and when the prince came along the street at about 11, he met the dragon coming out of the broken door of the treasury, with molten gold still dripping from his jaws. Then the prince turned and ran for his life, and as he ran toward the dragon-proof tower, the little white princess saw him coming, and she ran down and unlocked the door and let him in, and slammed the dragon-proof door in the fiery face of the dragon, who sat down and whined outside, because he wanted the prince very much indeed. The princess took Prince Tiresome into the best room and laid the cloth, and gave him cream and eggs and white grapes and honey and bread, with many other things yellow and white and good to eat. And she served him just as kindly as she would have done if he had been anyone else instead of the bad prince who had taken away her kingdom and kept it for himself, because she was a true princess and had a heart of gold. When he had eaten and drunk, he begged the princess to show him how to lock and unlock the door. The nurse was asleep, so there was no one to tell the princess not to, and she did. "You turn the key like this," she said, "and the door keeps shut, but turn it 9 times around the wrong way, and the door flies open." And so it did, and the moment it opened, the prince pushed the white princess out of her tower, just as he had pushed her out of her kingdom, and shut the door, for he wanted to have the tower all for himself. And there she was, in the street, and on the other side of the way the dragon was sitting whining, but he did not try to eat her, because, though the old nurse did not know it, dragons cannot eat white princesses with hearts of gold. The princess could not walk through the streets of the town in her milky silky gown with the daisies on it, and with no hat and no gloves. So she turned the other way and ran out across the meadows toward the wood. She had never been out of her tower before, and the soft grass under her feet felt like grass of paradise. She ran right into the thickest part of the wood, because she did not know what her heart was made of, and she was afraid of the dragon. And there in a dell she came on Elfin, and his 75 fine pigs. He was playing his flute, and around him the pigs were dancing cheerfully on their hind legs. And hello there, dream drogel. Hope you're doing well, and thank you for a follow. Good day, good day. "Oh dear," said the princess, "do take care of me, I'm so frightened." "I will," said Elvin, putting his arms around her. "Now you are quite safe. What were you frightened of?" "The dragon," she said. "So it's gotten out of the silver bottle," said Elvin. "I hope it's eaten the prince by now." "No," said Sabrinetta, "but why?" He told her of the mean trick that the prince had played on him. And hello, your local legend, thank you for a follow as well. Good point. You all best remember to stay hydrated as well. And the prince, he promised was me half his kingdom in the hand of his cousin the princess, said Alvin. Oh dear, what a shame, said Sabrinetta, trying to get out of his arms. How dare he? What's the matter? He asked, holding her tighter. It was a shame, or at least I thought so. But now we may keep this kingdom half and whole, if I may keep what I have. What's that? Asked the princess. Why, you, my pretty, my dear, said Alvin. And as for the princess, his cousin, forgive me, dearest heart, but when I asked for her, I hadn't seen the real princess, the only princess, my princess. Do you mean me? Said Sabrinetta. Who else? He asked. Yes, but 5 minutes ago you hadn't seen me. 5 minutes ago I was a pig keeper, now I've held you in my arms, I'm a prince, though I should have to keep the pigs to the end of my days. But you haven't asked me, said the princess. You asked me to take care of you, said Alvin, and I will all my life long. So that was settled, and they began to talk of all really important things, such as the dragon and the prince, and all the time Alvin did not know that this was the princess, but he knew that she had a heart of gold, and he told her so many times. The mistake, said Alvin, was in not having a dragon-proof bottle. I see that now. Oh, is that all? Said the princess. I can easily get you one of those, because everything in my tower is dragon-proof. We ought to do something to settle the dragon and save the children. So she started off to get the bottle, but she would not let Alvin come with her. If what you say is true, she said, if you are sure that I have a heart of gold, the dragon won't hurt me and somebody must stay with the pigs. Alvin was quite sure, so he let her go. She found the door of her tower open. The dragon had waited patiently for the prince, and the moment he opened the door and came out, though he was only out for an instant, proposed a letter to his prime minister, saying where he was and asking him to send a fire brigade to deal with a fiery dragon. The dragon ate him. Then the dragon went back to the wood, because it was getting near his time to grow small for the night. So Sabrinetta went in and kissed her nurse and made her a cup of tea, and explained what was going to happen, and that she had a heart of gold so the dragon couldn't eat her. And the nurse saw her, of course. The princess was quite safe, and kissed her and let her go. She took the dragon-proof bottle, made of burnished brass, and ran back to the wood and to the dell, where Alvin was sitting amongst the sleek black pigs waiting for her. I thought you were never coming back, he said. You've been away a year at least. The princess sat down beside him among the pigs, and they held each other's hands till it was dark, and then the dragon came crawling over the moss, scorching it as he came, and getting smaller as he crawled and curled up under the roof of the tree. Now then, said Alvin, you hold the bottle. Then he poked and prodded the dragon with bits of stick, till it crawled into the dragon-proof bottle, but there was no stopper. Never mind, said Alvin, I'll put my finger in for a stopper. No, let me, said the princess, but of course Alvin would not let her. He stuffed his finger into the top of the bottle, and the princess cried out. The sea, run for the cliffs, and off they went with the 75 pigs, trotting steadily after them in a long black procession. The bottle got hotter and hotter in Alvin's hands, because the dragon inside was puffing fire and smoke with all his might. Hotter and hotter and hotter, but Alvin held on till they came to a cliff edge. and there was a dark blue sea, and the whirlpool going round and round. Elven lifted the bottle high above his head, and hurled it out between the stars and the sea, and it fell in the middle of the whirlpool. "We've saved the country," said the princess. "You've saved the little children. Give me your hands." "I can't," said Elvin. "I shall never be able to take your dear hands again. My hands are burned off." And so they were. There were only black cinders where his hands ought to have been. The princess kissed him and cried over him, and tore pieces of her silky milky gown to tie them up with. And the two went back to the tower and told the nurse all about everything. And the pig sat outside and waited. "He is the bravest man in the world," said Sabranetta. "He has saved the country and the little children, but oh, his hands, his poor dear darling hands." Here the door of the room opened, and the oldest of the 75 pigs came in. It went up to Elvin and rubbed itself against him with loving little grunts. "See the dear creature," said the nurse, wiping away a tear. "It knows, it knows." Sabranetta stroked the pig because Elvin had no hands for stroking over anything else. "The only cure for a dragon burn," said the nurse, "is pig's fat, and well that faithful creature knows it." "I wouldn't for a kingdom," cried Elvin, stroking the pig as best he could with his elbow. "Is there really no other cure?" asked the princess. Here another pig put its black nose in at the door, and then another and another, till the room was full of pigs, a surging mass of round and blackness, pushing and struggling to get at Elvin, and grunting softly in the language of true affection. And hello, Naruto, and thank you for the follow. Hope you're well. "Well, there is one other," said the nurse. "The dear affectionate bees, they all want to die for you." "Where's the other cure?" said Sabranetta anxiously. "If a man is burned by a dragon," said the nurse, "and a certain number of people are willing to die for him, it is enough if each should kiss the burn and wish it well in the depths of his loving heart." The number, cried Sabranetta. 77, said the nurse. "We have only 75 pigs," said the princess, "and with me that's 76. "It must be 77, and I really can't die for him, so nothing can be done," said the nurse sadly. "He must have cork hands." "I knew about the 77 loving people," said Elvin, "but I never thought my dear pigs loved me so much as all this, and my dear too, and of course, that only makes it more impossible. There's one other charm that cures dragon burns though, but I'd rather be burned black all over than marry anyone but you, my dear, my pretty." "Why, who must you marry to cure dragon burns?" asked Sabranetta. "A princess, that's how St. George cured his burns." "There now, think of that," said the nurse, "and I never heard tell of that cure, old as I am." But Sabranetta threw her arms round Elvin's neck and held him as though she would never let him go. "Then it's all right, my dear brave precious Elvin," she cried, "for I am a princess, and you shall be my prince. Come along, nurse. Don't wait to put on your bonnet. We'll go and be married this very moment." And hello, Pet Games, and thank you for a follow. Hope you're well. So they went, and the pigs came after, moving in stately blackness 2 by 2, and the minute he was married to the princess, Elfin's hands got quite well, and the people who were wary of Prince Tiresome and his hippopotamuses held Sabrina and her husband as rightful sovereigns of the land. Next morning the prince and princess went out to see if the dragon had been washed ashore. They could see nothing of him, but when they looked out toward the whirlpool, they saw a cloud of steam, and the fishermen reported that the water for miles around was hot enough to shave with. And as the water is hot there to this day, we may feel pretty sure that the fierceness of that dragon was such that all the waters of all the sea were not enough to cool him. The whirlpool was too strong for him to be able to get out of it, so there he spins round and round forever and ever, doing some useful work at last, and warming the water for poor fisher folk to shave with. The prince and princess rule the land well and wisely. The nurse lives with them and does nothing but fine sewing, and only that when she wants to very much. The prince keeps no hippopotamuses and is consequently very popular. The 5 and 7 pigs live in white marble sties, with brass knockers and peck on the door plate, and are washed twice a day with Turkish sponges and soap scented with violets, and no one objects to their following the prince when he walks abroad, for they behave beautifully and always keep through the footpath and obey the notices about not walking on the grass. The princess feeds them every day with her own hands, and their first edict on coming to the throne was that the word pork should never be uttered on pain of death, and should besides be scratched out of all the dictionaries. And that'll be the end. That little story. Got one little story left in this collection. Let me put a quick break between. Let me sniff my nose for a sec. I don't know what it is. I think maybe my water is too cold and I got sniffly from it. So you always do get a bit sniffly during these. And also, if anyone's interested, that book link, the book has a couple of little cute pictures. If you want to check those out, you can check the book out there. And well, maybe read the stories for yourself, or if you happen to be a parent, I think they're kind of nice stories before bedtime as well. Nice and short and concise. Well, they're about 40 minutes usually for me so far. They've been around 40 minutes. That's a long time to put a kid to bed, isn't it? I don't know, I'm none of that. Yet. No time soon, I hope. If I were to become a dad within the coming 9 months, that'd be quite a surprise, at least. Anyhow, let me jump into the last story of this collection. Kind little Edmund, or the caves and the cockatrice. Cockatrice, isn't it? I don't remember. I've heard the word many a times actually, but how well. Edmund was a boy. The people who did not like him said that he was the most tiresome boy that ever lived. But his grandmother and his other friends said that he had an inquiring mind, and his granny often added that he was the best of boys. But she was very kind and very old. Edmund loved to find out about things, Perhaps you will think that in that case he was constant in his attendance at school, since there, if anywhere, we may learn whatever there is to be learned. But Edmund did not want to learn things, he wanted to find things out, which is quite different. His inquiring mind led him to take clocks to pieces, to see what made them go, to take locks of doors to see what made them stick. It was Edmund who could open the India rubber ball to see what made it bounce, and he never did see any more than you did when you tried the same experiment. Edmund lived with his grandmother. She loved him very much in spite of his inquiring mind, and hardly scolded him at all when he frizzled up her tortoise-shell comb in his anxiety to find out whether it was made of real tortoise-shell or of something that would burn. Edmund went to school, of course, now and then, and sometimes he could not prevent himself from learning something. But he never did it on purpose. "It is such a waste," said he. "They only know what everybody knows. I want to find out new things that nobody has thought of but me. I don't think you are likely to find out anything that none of the wise men in the whole world have thought of all these thousands of years," said Granny. But Edmund did not agree with her. He played truant whenever he could, for he was a kind-hearted boy, and he could not bear to think of a master's time and labour being thrown away on a boy like himself, who did not wish to learn only to find out, when there were so many worthy lads thirsting for instruction in geography and history, and reading and ciphering, and Mr. Smiles' self-help. Other boys played truant too, of course, and these went nothing on blackberrying or wild plum gathering, but Edmund never went on the side of the town where the green woods and hedges grew. He always went up the mountain where the great rocks were, and the tall dark pine trees, and where other people were afraid to go because of the strange noises that came out of the caves. Edmund was not afraid of these noises, for they were very strange and terrible. He wanted to find out what made them. One day he did. He had invented all by himself a very ingenious and new kind of lantern. He made with a turnip and a tumbler, that when he took the candle out of Granny's bedroom candlestick to put in it gave quite a splendid light. He had to go to school next day, and he was caned for being absent without leave, although he very straightforwardly explained that he had been too busy making the lantern to have time to come to school. But a day after he got up very early and took the lunch Granny had ready for him to take to school, 2 boiled eggs and an apple turnover, and he took his lantern and went off as straight as a dart to the mountains to explore the caves. The caves were very dark, but his lantern lighted them up beautifully, and they were most interesting caves with stalactites and stalagmites and fossils, and all the things you read about in the instructive books for the young. But Edmund did not care for any of these things just then. He wanted to find out what made the noises that people were afraid of, and there was nothing in the caves to tell him. Presently he sat down in the biggest cave and listened very carefully, and it seemed to him that he could distinguish 3 different sorts of noises. There was a heavy rumbling sound, like a very large old gentleman asleep after dinner, and there was a smaller sort of rumble going on at the same time, and there was a crowing, clucking sound as a chicken might make if it happened to be as big as a haystack. "It seems to me," said Edmund to himself, "that the clucking is nearer than the others." So he started up again and explored the caves once more. He found out nothing, but about halfway up the wall of the cave he saw a hole, and being a boy he climbed up to it and crept in, and 'twas the entrance to a rocky passage, and now the clucking sounded more plainly than before, and he could hardly hear the rumbling at all. "I'm going to find out something at last," said Edmund, and on he went. The passage wound and twisted and twisted and turned and wound, but Edmund kept on. "My lantern's burning better and better," said he presently, but the next minute he saw that all the light did not come from his lantern. It was a pale yellow light, and it shone down the passage far ahead of him through what looked like the chink of a door. "I expect it's the fire in the middle of the earth," said Edmund, who had not been able to help learning about it at school. But quite suddenly the fire ahead gave a pale flicker and went down, and the clucking ceased. The next moment Edmund turned a corner and found himself in front of a rocky door. The door was ajar. He went in, and there was a round cave, like a dome of St. Paul's. In the middle of the cave was a hole like a very big hand washing basin, and in the middle of the basin Edmund saw a large pale person sitting. This person had a man's face and a griffin's body, and big feathery wings and a snake's tail, and a cock's comb and neck feathers. "Whatever are you?" said Edmund. "I'm a poor starving cockatrice," answered the pale person in a very faint voice, "and I shall die, oh, I know I shall. My fire's gone out, I can't think how it happened. I must have been asleep, I have to stir it 7 times around, with my tail once in 100 years to keep it alight. And my watch must have been wrong, and now I shall die. I think I have said before what a kind-hearted boy Edmund was. Cheer up, said he, I'll light your fire for you. And off he went, and in a few minutes he came back, with a great armful of sticks from the pine trees outside, and with these and a lesson book or two that he had forgotten to lose before, and which, quite by an oversight, were safe in his pocket. He lit a fire all around the cockatrice. The wood blazed up, and presently something in the basin caught fire, and Edmund saw that it was a sort of liquid that burned like the brandy in a snapdragon. And now the cockatrice stirred it with his tail and flapped his wings in it, so that some of it splashed out on Edmund's hand and burned it rather badly. But the cockatrice grew red and strong and happy, and its comb grew scarlet and its feathers glossy, and it lifted itself up and crowed. Cockatrice and will do very loudly and clearly. Edmund's kindly nature was charmed to see the cockatrice so much improved in health, and he said, "Don't mention it, delay it, I'm sure," when the cockatrice began to thank him. "What can I do for you?" said the creature. "Tell me stories," said Edmund. "What about?" said the cockatrice. "About true things that I don't know at school," said Edward. So the cockatrice began, and he told him about mines and treasures, and geological formations, and about gnomes and fairies and dragons, and about glaciers and the Stone Age and the beginning of the world, and about the unicorn and the phoenix, and about magic black and white. And Edmund laid his axe and his turn over and listened, and when he got hungry again he said goodbye and went home. But he came again the next day for more stories, and the next day and the next for a long time. He told the boys at school about the cockatrice and his wonderful true tales, and the boys liked the stories, but when he told the master he was caned for untruthfulness. "But 'tis true," said Edmund. "Just look where the fire burned my hands. I see you've been playing with fire, and do mischief as usual," said the master, and he caned Edmund harder than ever. The master was ignorant and unbelieving, but I am told that some schoolmasters are not like that. Now, one day, Edmund made a new lantern out of something chemical that he sneaked from the school laboratory, and with it he went exploring again to see if he could find the things that made the other sorts of noises. And in quite another part of the mountain he found a dark passage all lined with brass, so that it was like the inside of a huge telescope, and at the very end of it he found a bright green door. There was a brass plate on the door that said, "Mrs. D. knock and ring," and a white label that said, "Call me at 3. Edmund had a watch that had been given to him on his birthday 2 days before, and he had not yet had time to take it to pieces and see what made it go, so it was still going. He looked at it now, it's at 2:45. Did I tell you before what a kind-hearted boy Edmund was? He sat down on the brass doorstep and waited till 3 o'clock. Then he knocked and rang, and there was a rattling and puffing inside. The great door flew open, and Edmund had only just time to hide behind it, when out came an immense yellow dragon, who wriggled off down the brass cave like a long rattling worm, or perhaps more like a monstrous centipede. Edmund crept slowly out and saw the dragon stretching herself on the rocks in the sun, and he crept past the great creature and tore down the hill into the town, and burst into school crying out, "There's a great dragon coming, somebody ought to do something, or we shall all be destroyed." He was caned for untruthfulness without any delay. His master was never one for postponing a duty. "But 'tis true," said Edmund, "just see if it isn't." He pointed out of the window, and everyone could see a vast yellow cloud rising up into the air above the mountain. "'Tis only a thunder shower," said the master, and caned Edmund more than ever. This master was not like some masters I know. He was very obstinate and would not believe his own eyes if they told him anything different from what he had been saying before his eyes spoke. So while the master was writing lying is very wrong and liars must be caned, it is all for their own good on the blackboard for Edmund to copy out 700 times. Edmund sneaked out of school and ran for his life, across the town towards a granny, but she was not at home. So then he made off through the back door of the town and raced up the hill to tell the cockatrice and ask for his help. It never occurred to him that the cockatrice might not believe him. You see, he had heard so many wonderful tales from him, and I believed them all. And when you believe all a person's stories, they ought to believe yours. 'Tis only fair. At the mouth of the cockatrice's cave, Edmund stopped, very much out of breath, to look back at the town as he ran. He had felt his little legs tremble and shake, while the shadows of the great yellow cloud fell upon him. Now he stood once more between warm earth and blue sky, and looked down on the green plain dotted with fruit trees, and the red-roofed farms and plots of gold corn. In the middle of that plain the great town lay, with its strong walls with the holes pierced for the archers, and its square towers with holes for dropping mounted lead on the heads of strangers, its bridges and its steeples, the quiet river edged with willow and alder, and the pleasant green garden place in the middle of the town, where people sat on holidays to smoke their pipes and listen to the band. Edmund saw it all, and he saw too, creeping across the plain, marking her way by a black line as everything withered. As everything withered at her touch, the great yellow dragon, and they saw that she was many times bigger than the whole town. "Oh, my poor dear granny," said Edmund, "for I had a feeling heart, as I thought ought to have told you before." The yellow dragon crept nearer and nearer, licking her greedy lips with her long red tongue, and Edmund knew that in the school his master was still teaching, earnestly and still not believing Edmund still the least little bit. "He'll jolly well have to believe it soon anyhow," said Edmund to himself, and though he was a very tender-hearted boy, I think it only fair to tell you that he was this. I'm afraid he was not as sorry as he ought to have been to think of the way in, which his master was going to learn how to believe what Edmund said. Then the dragon opened her jaws wider and wider and wider. Edmund shut his eyes, for though his master was in the town, the amiable Edmund shrank from ignoring the awful sight. "Oh, and hello, Harry Legionary, how do you do? Hope you slept well. Good day to you. And thank you for the follow." When he opened his eyes again, there was no town, only a bare place where it had stood, and the dragon licking her lips and curling herself up to go to sleep, just as Kitty does when she has quite finished with a mouse. Edmund gasped once or twice, and then ran into the cave to tell the cockatrice. "Well," said the cockatrice thoughtfully, when the tale had been told, "what then?" "I don't think you quite understand," said Edmund gently. "The dragon has swallowed up the town." "Does it matter?" said the cockatrice. "But I live there," said Edmund blankly. "Never mind," said the cockatrice, turning over in the pool of fire to warm its other side, which was chilly, because Edmund had, as usual, forgotten to close the cave door. "You can live here with me." "And hello, thing. My main language is Dutch, some from the Netherlands." "And hello, Macintosh, how do you do? Thank you for the follow, by the way." "I'm afraid I haven't made my meaning clear," said Edmund patiently. "You see, my granny is in the town, and I can't bear to lose my granny like this." "I don't know what a granny may be," said the cockatrice, who seemed to be growing weary on the subject, "but if it's a possession to which you attach any importance—" "Well, of course it is," said Edmund, losing patience at last. "Oh, do help me. What can I do?" "If I were you," said his friend, stretching itself out in a pool of flame so that the waves covered him up to his chin, "I should find the drakling and bring it here." "But why?" said Edmund. He had gotten into the habit of asking why at school, and the master had always found it trying. As for the cockatrice, he was not going to stand that sort of thing for a moment. splashing angrily in the flames. "I give you advice, take it or leave it. I shan't bother you about you any more. If you bring the Drakling here to me, I'll tell you what to do next, if not, not." And the cockatrice drew the fire up close around his shoulder, tucked himself up in it, and went to sleep. Now this was exactly the right way to manage Edmund, only no one had ever thought of trying to do it before. He stood for a moment looking at the cockatrice, looked at Edmund out of the corner of his eye, and began to snore very loudly. And Edmund understood once and for all that the cockatrice wasn't going to put up with any nonsense. He respected the cockatrice very much from that moment, and set off at once to do exactly as he was told, for perhaps the first time in his life. Though he had played truant so often, he knew one or two things that perhaps you don't know, though you have always been so good and gone to school regularly. For instance, he knew that a Drakling is a dragon's baby, and he felt sure that what he had to do was to find a third of the three noises that people used to hear coming from the mountains. Of course, the clucking had been the cockatrice, and the big noise like a large gentleman asleep after dinner had been the big dragon, so the smaller rumbling must have been the Drakling. And hello, Scully Owl, thank you for the follow as well. Good day, good day. Hope you're all having a nice and lovely, relaxing start to your weekend. He plunged boldly into the caves and searched and wandered and wandered and searched, and at last he came to a third door in the mountain, and on it was written, "The baby is asleep." Just before the door stood 50 pairs of copper shoes, and no one could have looked at them for a moment without seeing what sort of feet they were made for. For each shoe had 5 holes in it for the Drakling's 5 claws, and there were 50 pairs because the Drakling took after his mother, and had 100 feet no more and no less. He was the kind Condrakos and the Pyrrhus and the learned books. Oh, thank you for keeping me hydrated. Edmund was a good deal frightened, but he remembered the grim expression of the cockatrice's eye, and the fixed determination of his snore still rang in his ears, in spite of the snoring of the Drakling, which was in itself considerable. He screwed up his courage, flung the door open, and called out, "Hello, you Drakling, get out of bed this minute." The Drakling stopped snoring and said sleepily, "It ain't time yet." "Your mother says you are too, anyhow, and look sharp about it, what's more," said Edmund, getting courage from the fact that the Drakling had not eaten him yet. The Drakling sighed, and Edmund could hear it getting out of bed. The next morning it began to come out of its room and to put on its shoes, and was not nearly so big as its mother, only about the size of a Baptist chapel. "Hurry up," said Edmund, as it fumbled clumsily with a 17th shoe. "Mother said I was never to go out without my shoes," said the Drakling, so Edmund had to help it to put them on. It took some time and was not a comfortable occupation. At last the Drakling said it was ready, and Edmund, who had forgotten to be frightened, said, "Well, come on then," and they went back through the cockatrice. The cave was rather narrow for the Drakling, but it made itself thin, as you may see a fat worm do when it wants to get through a narrow crack in a piece of hard earth. "Here it is," said Edmund, and the cockatrice woke up at once I asked the Drackling very politely to sit down and wait. Your mother will be here presently, said the cockatrice, stirring up its fire. The Drackling sat down and waited, but it watched the fire with hungry eyes. I beg your pardon, it said at last, but I am always accustomed to having a little basin of fire as soon as I get up, and I feel rather faint, might I? It reached out a claw toward the cockatrice's basin. Certainly not, said the cockatrice sharply. Where were you brought up? Did they never teach you that we must not ask for all we see, eh? I beg your pardon, said the Drackling humbly, but I am really very hungry. The cockatrice beckoned Edmund to the side of the basin, and whispered in his ear so long and so earnestly that one side of the dear boy's hair was quite burnt off, and he never once interrupted the cockatrice to ask why. But when the whispering was over, Edmund, whose heart, as I may have mentioned, was very tender, said to the Drackling, "If you are really hungry, poor thing, I can show you where there's plenty of fire." And off he went through the cave, and the Drackling followed. When Edmund came to the proper place, he stopped. There was a round iron thing in the floor, like the ones the men shoot the coals down into your cellar, only much larger. Edmund heaved it up by a hook that stuck out at one side, and a rush of hot air came up that nearly choked him. But the Drackling came close and looked down with one eye and sniffled and said, "That smells good, eh?" "Yes," said Edmund. "Well, that's the fire in the middle of the earth. There's plenty of it, all done to a turn. You'd better go down and begin your breakfast, hadn't you?" So the Drackling wiggled and wriggled through the hole, and began to crawl faster and faster down the slanting shaft that leads to the fire in the middle of the earth, and Edmund, doing exactly as he had been told for a wonder, got the end of the Drackling still and ran the iron hook through it, so that the Drackling was held fast, and it could not turn around and wriggle up again to look after its poor tail, because, as everyone knows, the way to the fire below is very easy to go down, but quite impossible to come back on. There is something about it in Latin beginning, facilis descensus. So there was the Drackling, fast by the silly tail of it, and there was Edmund, very busy and important and very pleased with himself, hurrying back to the cockatrice. "Now," said he. "Well, now," said the cockatrice, "go to the mouth of the cave and laugh at the dragon, so that she hears you." Edmund very nearly said why, but he stopped in time and instead said, "She won't hear me." "Oh, very well," said the cockatrice, "no doubt you know best," and he began to tuck himself up again in the fire, so Edmund did as he was bid. And when he began to laugh, his laughter echoed in the mouth of the cave, though it sounded like the laughter of a whole castle full of giants. And the dragon, lying asleep in the sun, woke up and said very crossly, "What are you laughing at?" "At you," said Edmund, and went on laughing. The dragon bore it as long as she could, but like everyone else she couldn't stand being made fun of, so presently she dragged herself up the mountain very slowly, because she had just had a rather heavy meal, and stood outside and said, "What are you laughing at?" in a voice that made Edmund feel as if he should never laugh again. Then the good cockatrice called out, "And you've eaten your own Drackling, swallowed it with a town, your own little Drackling." And so the cockatrice laughed as well, and Edmund found the courage to cry, ha ha, which sounded like tremendous laughter in the echo of the cave. Dear me, said the dragon, I thought a town stuck in my throat rather. I must take it out and look through it more carefully. And with that she coughed and choked, and there was the town on the hillside. Edmund had run back to the cockatrice and had told him what to do, so before the dragon had time to look through the town again for a drakling, the voice of the drakling itself was heard howling miserably from inside the mountain, because Edmund was pinching it still as hard as he could in a round iron door, like the one where the men pour the coals out of the sacks into the cellar. And the dragon heard the voice and said, Why, whatever's the matter with baby? He's not here. And made herself thin and crept into the mountain to find her drakling. The cockatrice kept on laughing as loud as it could, and Edmund kept on pinching, and presently the green dragon, very long and narrow she had made herself, found her head where the round hole was with the iron lid. Her tail was a mile or two off outside the mountain. When Edmund heard her coming, he gave one last nip to the drakling still, and then heaved from the lid and stood behind it, so that the dragon could not see him. Then he loosed the drakling still from the hook, and the dragon peeped down the hole just in time to see the drakling still disappear down a smooth, slanting shaft with one last squeak of pain. Whatever may have been the poor dragon's other faults, she was an excellent mother. She plunged head first into the hole and slid down the shaft after her baby. Edmund watched her head go, and then the rest of her. She was so long now, she had stretched herself thin, that it took all night. It was like watching a goods train go by in Germany. When the last joint of her tail had gone, Edmund slammed down the iron door. He was a kind-hearted boy, as you have guessed, and he was glad to think that dragon and drakling would now have plenty to eat of their favourite food forever and ever. He thanked the cockatrice for his kindness and got home just in time to have breakfast and get to school by 9. Of course he could not have done this if the town had been in its old place by the river in the middle of the plain, but it had taken root on the hillside just where the dragon left it. Well, said the master, where were you yesterday? Edmund explained that the master at once caned him for not speaking the truth. But it is true, said Edmund. Why the whole town was swallowed by the dragon, you know it was. Nonsense, said the master. There was a thunderstorm and an earthquake, that's all. And he caned Edmund more than ever. But, said Edmund, who always would argue, even in the least favourable circumstances. How do you account for the town being on the hillside now, instead of by the river as it used to be? It was always on the hillside, said the master, and all the class are the same, for I had more sense than to argue with a person who carried a cane. But look at the map, said Edmund, who was going to be beaten in argument, whatever he might be in the flesh. The master pointed to the map on the wall. There was the town on the hillside, and nobody but Edmund could see it, of course. The shock of being swallowed by the dragon had upset all the maps and put them wrong. And then the master caned Edmund again, explaining that this time it was not for truthfulness, but for his vexatious argumentative habits. This will show you what a prejudiced and ignorant man Edmund's master was, how different from the revered head of the nice school where your good parents are kind enough to send you. The next day Edmund thought he would prove his skill by showing people the cockatrice, and he actually persuaded some people to go into the cave with him. But the cockatrice had boarded himself in and would not open the door. So Edmund got nothing by it except a scolding for taking people on a wild goose chase. A wild goose, said they, is nothing like a cockatrice. And hello, Liam and Nikomar. Thank you for the follows. Hope you're well. And poor Edmund could not say a word, though he knew how wrong they were. The only person who believed him was his granny, but then she was very old and very kind, and had always said he was the best of boys. And thank you for keeping me hydrated. Only one good thing came out of all this long story. Edmund has never been quite the same boy since. He does not argue quite so much, and he agreed to be apprenticed to a locksmith, so that he might one day be able to pick the lock of the cockatrice's front door and learn some more of the things that other people don't know. But he is quite an old man now, and he hasn't gotten the door open yet. And they didn't the slightest wonder why there was a door in the cave. Of course not, I suppose. But alright, that was the end of that story. And oh, interesting. Sounds like they made a couple of fixes in transcribing this book. A little note at the bottom. But well, that does wrap up the Book of Dragons. If you want to hear the other 5 tales, I read them yesterday. I'll get to uploading them on YouTube as well, for at least of yesterday's stream. And then this after that. Will be a bit, but I think I'll have that going live by tomorrow then or something. But well, the VoD is still here on Twitch for a week or 2, I think. What am I saying? Should be on Twitch for a month or 2. I'm pretty sure. At least I am pretty sure. So let me see. I did want to keep the stream kind of short, so I think just about this will probably about do. Let me for the other little bit. Just get a tongue drum, I guess. And see who is live with ASMR. Well, yeah. That one is, but rating 18 viewers and 500, I think. I don't know. Always prefer supporting the smaller creators first if I can. Who all do we live roll? Mainly just see Cork. Let me check something real quick. Where? Oh wait, that's who stuff rated as well, I think. Well, I suppose I'll have a look at that later. Who to rate? I'll do a bit of Tundrum first, like 30 minutes or something. I wonder when slash if Chewie is doing ASMR during his 12-hour stream today. Apart from that, I'm not really seeing much right now, but that's alright. I'll have a look at who's life after that. After a bit of Tundrum. So let me quickly swap over, actually do a quick small little break, run downstairs real quick, run back up. Bit of exercise, not really for that goal per se, but bit of exercise. And then grab the Tundrum. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. Gotta quickly set things up for Tundrum time now. Gotta up the gain, put the mic a bit further away from my mouth. Until though is I'm doing well, how are you? Hope you're well as well. Let me with that, I usually when swapping over real quick. quick little sound check, just seeing where things are at. And misery, and well, unfortunately, it's not the best video loop. They stop basically right here. You probably saw it when I was gone for a bit. Let me see. I think we're good for you now. So, time to just vibe for a bit. Let me see, get it back comfortably on my lap. Let's see real quick. I know a lot of people also just play with their fingers. Or is it more done with nails? Yeah, I don't know, I'm more comfortable playing with the mallets, to be honest. It's a bit louder, so it's a bit better for the mic, I think. It's quite a bit louder, quite a bit more audible. And hello, Miss Annabelle, hope you're doing well. Good day to you. And I don't really know the movie, but sounds interesting. Maybe check it out sometime. can have a nice and relaxing weekend. It's a steel tongue drum. I need to go. But yeah, I can show what it looks like for a sec as well. As long as it doesn't cut out, but it shouldn't, hasn't been that. They make them very ornate as well sometimes, with a lot of decorations. I honestly just like the clean look of this one. I can get you a link to the one I've got, although these are just made in the Netherlands, so their shipping might not be too well to outside of the Netherlands. I think they do have worldwide shipping when I saw it. I've got this one to be precise. Yeah, they're very lovely instruments. And honestly, whilst a handpan has an even warmer, even more lovely sound, handpans are just very expensive because of the material and stuff they're made from, I'm pretty sure. And the way more crafting that goes into it. But I'm saving up for a handpan as well. So. Maybe someday soon enough, I hope to have a handpan next to this. Let me get back to playing for a bit. minutes and but I do think I'll have to leave it at about that for today-ish. Let me quickly see who was live. Well, still no one else in the ASMR Discord live. And Alessia just rated Light of Heart, it seems. Could come in with a small raid just after that, but don't want to look like a chum that way. I mean, I am a chum, but oh, and Boombeaver just went live. So that sounds like a plan. Let me get my headset on, get that raid started, and thank you all for being here today. Hope you all enjoyed the Book of Dragons. I really love the book. It was a lovely read. The little short stories in it. So raid started and I just let the timer run out. But once I let the timer run out, let me get back to playing a bit. Just double check. Yeah, I got the name right. I copy pasted the name.